Hello, welcome. We have a few more people coming in. All right. I'll just go ahead and get this on our screen. Whoops, going too fast. There we go. Hello, I hope everyone's having a good Tuesday. Cinco de Mayo, having some margaritas today.
My son's birthday too.
Oh, happy birthday to him.
Yes, I know.
That's great. We're just giving a minute or two just to see if anybody else is popping in. Right, Todd, because I'm sharing, I can't see the chat, so if you don't mind just keeping an eye on that.
Okay, certainly.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome, welcome. Really excited that everybody can be here today. And I'm just realizing I can't see my own notes. Kind of funny how that works. Hold on. Second monitor comes in handy. I was all prepared and then had everything on the wrong screen. I'm just going to cheat, do it this way. Whoops. I'm not sharing anymore, am I?
We can still see your
PowerPoint. Not in presentation, just
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Well, welcome to Coaching Week. Coaching Week runs on Monday, May 4th through I think Saturday, May 10th, and this week to celebrate ICF High Country, a local chapter of coaches. They're providing weekly webinar coaching sessions, basically, at noon Mountain Time every day this week. So yesterday we had a career coaching topic. Today we are discussing life, and then tomorrow we are having a business topic, and then on Thursday we are discussing our overall well-being, especially during this time of COVID. And then on Friday we have our general monthly meeting, and we're going to be talking about ICF ethics, because we're having some updates this year. So our lovely Linda Secretan will be discussing ethics for ICF. So today we have Laura Alvarez Schrag, Todd Hess, and Patricia Teall Vincent with us today, and they will be discussing how even though we all come from different types of backgrounds and cultures, we have limited beliefs about ourselves. And yet, from a place of clarity, we can understand and create our own individual and unique purposes to build a way forward through a very proven process. So first up is Todd Hess. So I'm going to try to turn off sharing my screen and let you take it away.
okay. All right, let me get in and share my screen. And okay, sorry, there we go. Everybody see my slide?
Yep.
Okay, great. So my name is Todd Hess, and I am really excited to be here today with Laura and Patricia to present to you today on the path forward in our life. And I'm going to be talking about something that I found after I became a certified coach, and it's just a nice tool bag that I use when I coach people as well. And it is called the work, and the work is a term that Byron Katie, who was the author, she goes by Katie, the author created after she had, in 1986, she had been really depressed and substance dependent, and she just one day woke up and realized what was going on with her mind, and she began to question her beliefs, and that brought a lot of clarity in, and her suffering went away. And she has seen how our beliefs really can create suffering, and so her goal is to really eradicate suffering. And it's a great tool for me that I found, and that I've used in my personal life and also with the clients that I work with as well. So Loving What Is the book that she wrote. That's her main book. She's written several books, as you see here. A lot of the things I'm going to be discussing today is for free on thework.com. You can download these worksheets that I'll be talking about today and exercises, and it's all for free, that you can go to yourself. So the work basically is about inquiry. And what do we do when we inquire about our beliefs? And so I love this quote from Katie. She says, people try so hard to let go of their negative behaviors and thoughts, and it doesn't work, or it works for only a short time. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's totally the case. And she says, I didn't let go of my negative thoughts. I questioned them, and they let go of me. And so did my addictions and my depression. And so questioning these beliefs and these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, or the beliefs that we have about others, really helps us internalize that. And how we begin with that is that we create this one, we call it a one-liner. And we focus in on a situation that we have this belief, this stressful thought, basically. And so it could be with somebody, or with something as well. So like the coronavirus, we can do that. So the first way that we can create that one-liner is there is a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. Again, this is on thework.com. But there are 6 questions that you can go through, and it's really focused on another person. But you can do it on something, like if you want to do COVID-19, if you want to, or the weather, or anything, basically. And you go through that and you fill that out, and that creates a lot of things that you can just get out on paper. It's really important to write it down, because our mind will like play tricks on us, but writing it down is really important. And the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, that comes out of, because Katie says everyone is a mirror image of yourself and your own thinking coming back at you. And so this is really how to discover that. And so when we have limiting beliefs or stressful thoughts about other, it's really a reflection upon ourselves and how we're believing about ourselves and what we can do and how we can bring peace to ourselves. Another easier way to get to that one-liner is this new process that Katie came out recently, and it's just I complain about. For the sake of time, I'm just going to walk through this really quickly, and it's just I complain about blank because blank. And again, it can be an object or a person. And so I complain about Aubrey because she talks too much. And to turn that into a one-liner, we just take away the I complain about because she, or because it, if it's an object, and then we just bring that in together and we say Aubrey talks too much. Then we want to solidify and ground ourselves where we're at. When I had this thought, Aubrey talks too much, when did I have that thought? And it was when we were camping. We're sitting around the campfire, and if you can imagine that with me, and Aubrey is just talking and talking and talking. And maybe you know somebody that talks too much. And so I have this belief that Aubrey talks too much. And so I ground myself in that moment. And then I go through these 4 questions. And these 4 questions are really at the core of the work. And Katie says that she doesn't call it the work for nothing, because it does take some stillness, it takes some effort, and it takes some real concentration, and she calls it a meditation as well. So the very first question, it's the first 2 questions are yes or no. It's just a 1-syllable answer, and our minds want to play tricks on us. They want to manipulate and say something different. But the first one, is it true? Aubrey talks too much. Is it true? Yes, I think she talks too much. And then next question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? Again, it's that 1-syllable answer, yes or no. And sometimes we have to sit with it and like, what is our heart telling us? And then, so I can come back and say, yeah, I can absolutely know that it's true that Aubrey talks too much. And then the next question is, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And that's where you bring up all of those emotions about how you feel. I feel irritated and frustrated, and I treat Donna, I disengage with her, or Aubrey, I dismiss her, and you know, all of those feelings, and we really get that out. And then the last question is, who would you be without that thought? So just like how I had you imagine with me about sitting around a campfire and Aubrey's talking too much, same thing happens here, is that we imagine, who would I be without that thought? So it doesn't even occur to me that Aubrey talks too much, but who would I be? And I'd be more present, I would be more engaged, I would listen, I would try to figure out what I can learn from it, maybe make it fun, or even maybe if it was questioning if I should be there, if that's the right place for me at that moment, instead of being critical of Aubrey. And so going through those questions really can free us from that stressful thought, especially by getting to number 4 and really saying, I could really look at that a different way that's more peaceful and kind. And then the last one, the last part of this, of the work, is the turnarounds. And for the sake of time, I won't go into that too much, but basically it's, we turn it around. So Aubrey speaks too much, Aubrey doesn't speak too much. And so what are 3 ways that are true or truer that is, that it makes sense to me? So there's different ways to turn it around, and again, it's all on thework.com. But this is just a very quick way of going through the work and how we can look at our limiting beliefs and become peaceful about it. So now we have some time for just a couple of minutes for questions. If there's any questions that are out there that you'd like to ask, you're more than welcome to chat your questions if you'd like. And also, or you can just unmute yourself and ask.
Todd, I already have one in the chat. Does it work to use the one-liner and 4 questions on issues we are having with ourselves?
Okay, very good question. So the work definitely can work about the beliefs about ourselves. Katie does really caution, though, that unless we are able to, unless we've done some work about our beliefs on others, then we can work on ourselves, because a lot of times it comes back to ourselves anyway, like I mentioned before. But it does work, and you know, sometimes I'll sit and I'll go through the work about some limiting beliefs about myself, or I've done that with my coach that I work with Catherine Dixon here in Salt Lake City. And so definitely it is possible. Other questions?
So another one is, what are the possible outcomes of people who do the work?
The possible outcomes is just really getting more in touch with yourself and understanding who your true self is. And because we spend so much energy in our stressful thoughts, and by eliminating those stressful thoughts, we can focus on other things that are more important for us. And so it's just really eliminating that stressful thought from our lives. And so, like, going back to this example of Aubrey, you know, she talks too much. Going through and like understanding where I'm coming from, like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's just some kind of agitation that I have against Aubrey, and so when she talks, it sounds like that. But that's my issue. That's not Aubrey's, but that's my issue. And once I wake up to that, then I can come at peace.
And then the last question I have so far, whoops, where did it go? Oh, another question that just came in. Is the work a program or a tool?
Good question. The work is a tool. So like on thework.com, you can just go and click on exercises. And some people are fine with just doing that, going through the tool themselves. I use it as a tool in my coaching. People will come and actually want to do the work with me. And so therefore, I have a process that I walk them through, and questions, just as in coaching, it's about inquiring questions anyway. And so, but it's not a program, it's just totally a tool.
My question came in. I love the work. For people who are new to this, how long does it take to work a thought on one's own, typically speaking?
That's a good question, and I don't know if I can really give it a very fair answer. What I have found that works for me and the people that I work with is where they're at in really sitting still with it and understanding it and coming through. And it does vary by person to person. But there are some people that it takes a long time because they've never done anything like this. And other times, like people who do meditate themselves, and so they're able to get still with it, and then they can move through it really quickly. So it does range, but it is possible if the people want to work at it. So I think that's all the time that we have. I'm going to turn the time over to Laura, and she talks about building our purpose. Let's stop sharing.
Great, thank you, Todd. And let's see. Hopefully I'm sharing mine. And so that's great to start with what Todd was talking about, kind of understanding other people and our beliefs of others. And I'm going to focus on some of the other work that really talks about focusing on ourselves and discovering and doing some of that work that Todd kind of talked about, of understanding internally our path. So during the last several months, I think many of us have experienced the need to pause with COVID, and have taken time to really, I think, pause and think and reflect on, gee, what was life like before we had the stay-at-home orders or social distancing? And so this picture, I kind of, came to mind as, this question that normally we are just off and going, running all different directions. And how often do we really stop and think and pause to say, where am I going? And so as you can see in this visual, there are it's a huge intersection. There's all different types of vehicles. There's people walking, there's people on cars, buses, light rails. And I think one of the things that is important as we start to look within ourselves of what is, where am I going? What is my purpose? Is, are we just going along with the traffic? Are we going with the flow? Are we kind of in autopilot, like many of us tend to be, right? Going to work or going to wherever we are. And are we taking the same route every day just because that's the route we know, or that's the route that, we've been told to take? Or are we taking detours? Are we discovering maybe different ways to get to our destination, or maybe a new destination? And this is really where it kind of begins to have us start to explore of, what is our purpose? And our purpose really begins with, finding our true north, or you've heard probably the term your North Star or your why. And essentially what, all of those represent they're your internal compass. They're what, guides you. They're really at the deepest, levels of what your beliefs are, as Todd talked about, your values, your principles. And it's important for us to can you really understand what is, my true north, right? So that we can all ensure that we're not just traveling the path because that's the one we see or that's what everybody else is doing and we're just going with traffic, but yet we are actually being intentional and purposeful in how we're moving forward. So it really also, this is where it's a lot of work, as Todd mentioned in the work. That's why it's called work, right? It's not easy, and I want to share with you just kind of maybe some starting points of how you start to discover what your true north is. And it's about reflection and some discovery. So the first thing maybe to think about is, how do you set a direction, right? Maybe thinking about, where do I need or want to go? Right? I think oftentimes, like I said before, we might just be going through the motions, but do we stop and say, gee, do I really want to go there? Or do I really need to go there? Right? And just asking that simple question has us kind of change our mindset in our thinking. Also is, what do I need to do or what do I want to do? There's a lot of things that we do because we feel we need to or we think we need to. Well, we may or we may not. There's a lot of things that we do because we believe that that's what we want, but maybe we haven't asked ourselves the question whether that truly is what we want. And then going deeper into some, further reflection is really, diving a little bit deeper into asking yourself, what is important to me? What is meaningful? Okay? What brings me, joy and fulfillment? What energizes me? Where do I get my energy? Where do I get my motivation? Right? And it's that step of really looking within and posing those questions to yourself or having somebody who can help pose those questions to you, such as, coaching or tools like, Todd referenced. There's a lot of tools to help us ask ourselves and kind of discover what are those questions we need to ask ourselves. And when we talk about and think about, living your purpose, it's not necessarily just one single purpose in life, because I think that can be overwhelming. And sometimes that's where we say, okay, I can never really define that. I don't know what that one North Star is. And I think the important thing to remember is just being purposeful in whatever it is that you're doing or discovering, whether it's your career, what is it that you're seeking or wanting from your, professional life, your career? If it's your personal life, what is most important? What are you wanting or needing in some of these questions that I shared in your personal life? And so, while there isn't only maybe one whole purpose in everything, there's some different levels that will, guide you in different aspects of your life. Ultimately, when we can get to what is my overall life purpose, some of those things start to align and help us move towards our life's purpose. Another very important thing, I think, just to kind of bring all that together is that it's a journey. Living, life itself is a journey. So living your purpose is a journey. And so as you look at the first visual, picture on the left, you'll see that, the terrain will change. It changes as in our journey. It's not a straight path. It's not, oh, okay, I know where, what my why is, and I'm just going to straight, get there and run towards it. It's going to be a windy road. It might be, difficult in that you see some mountains. It's going to be the visibility or the difficulty of the journey is going to change. The clouds will roll in, and maybe it won't always be so clear. But then the sun will also shine, and sometimes it'll be even clearer than other times. So it's about the discovery. It's about as we grow and have life experiences, they shape us. They shape who we are, and they shape the direction that we're going or what we're looking for, striving for. So it's about enjoying and being open to what those experiences are and how they inform us and influence us in our purpose. The other, I would say, ingredient, for lack of a better term, is the commitment and dedication. So as you see that little flower in the middle picture, boy, that's some commitment. To grow and to bloom amongst those rocks took, effort and I think in commitment. That that flower was going to grow, it was going to bloom, and so the commitment to grow even through maybe the maneuvering through the difficult rocks, it still was able to grow. And we see that all the time, that just even in where flowers bloom, where we would never expect one to be able to grow or something to grow in rocks, but it does. And the same is true for us in our purpose and living our purpose, is just the commitment to pursue and live a purposeful life, is going through the rocks and knowing that we'll still come out where we're meant to be. And then lastly, and this is kind of symbolic of the North Star that we is having the lighthouse, your the light to guide you to be there, even though sometimes you might not be able to see it, as is true with the lighthouse, but it shines enough for you to know which direction you're going and to keep moving forward. And that really is again, the important part of just traveling that journey, identifying what those things are that are important to you, meaningful to you, and adapting and adjusting to ensure that you are, traveling your path forward. So with that, I would also like to invite you to put in any questions in the chat or unmute yourself. This is just enough to give you an idea of what does it really mean. We talk about living your purpose, and these are some of the elements that we consider as we discover what that purpose is in our lives. So if you have any questions, if you want to put them in the chat or unmute, it's perfectly fine. Or maybe everybody's asking themselves those questions right now and doing some of that self-discovery. Okay. Well, if there are no questions,
we got one.
Okay.
Yes. Is money an immoral purpose?
Is money an immoral purpose? Well, that's that's an interesting question. But I know that, so let me answer it this way. I don't know that I can say it's immoral or not. But I know a lot of people struggle with, and I struggle with, if that's a purpose or goal to make money, and the way I and that seems to be kind of a conflict when you're saying, well, I want to also give and serve. So for me, one of the ways that I look at money is, how does that serve me? Does it serve me in accomplishing and doing some of the things that are important to me? I have a very strong, personal commitment to nonprofit organizations and to serving the community. And one of the ways that I can support some of those efforts is through donations. So for me, there is an element of, in order to help move those efforts forward, it does need, they do require some donations. And that is one way that I can help, as well as through volunteering, but there's, money. And so there is a portion, part of me that I know that the monetary element is important because it helps me fulfill some of the things that are meaningful and important to me. So I don't know if that answers the direct question, but that is one way that, to kind of think about money. I would say, for you to think about how do you hold money and how does it serve you and your purpose?
We have a couple more questions that came in, Laura. Do you have a favorite book on this topic that you can recommend?
Oh, I'll have to kind of think about that. I have a lot of books. I think a lot of what comes to mind is I just recently finished reading it. It was the 5 a.m. Club. And that's a great book where it really has you think about kind of what is important to you and shifting, broadening your perspective. So that's a great book that I would recommend. Another one is Mindset, and actually it's a book that's been around for a very, very long time. And that is kind of deals more around kind of limiting beliefs and thoughts. And I think that becomes very important and relevant because I think oftentimes we hold ourselves back. We say, this is, my purpose or what I want to do. Maybe I want to really help, alleviate, poverty or hunger. And we think, well, that's just too big and that's just silly of me to think that I could affect that. Well, we can. It's just about how we think about it. So, if that is something that's important in, for you and your purpose, then finding ways to help and contribute. So Mindset is a good book to just help expand your thinking.
I think we have time for one more question. Two people asked something similar. So okay. One was, how do you decide between a calling or a career? And then the other question that came in was, I often feel I have more than one purpose. Do you find that there must be one overarching purpose, or can we have multiple branches of purposes?
Yes, wonderful question. And you can, I think you can have and do have multiple purposes because we're dynamic human beings and living in a dynamic world. I think what, I also see in my own personal experience, I will say, is that as I have been on my journey and as time goes on and through my experiences, some of those purposes that I had identified for my professional life and my personal life have started to converge and align. So there's a lot of, for instance, the work that I do in coaching and in business consulting. Much of it has now also aligned with what my personal goals and purpose is in life. So I think that you can have a variety of goals. I think the key thing is to be purposeful and say, I'm intentional about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I think that goes along with the other question about, is it a job or is it a calling? Well, I think if we are clear about our purpose, a lot of times those can be one and the same. You know, we're called to do a certain type of work, and so I think that those two, you know, also start to converge. Great questions. So I will end also, I know we're wrapping up, just, you know, my contact information. If you'd like to chat, you know, please feel free to reach out. Now I'm going to stop sharing and have Patricia share her screen.
All right, let me pull mine up here. Okay, I loved hearing that from Laura and from Todd about beliefs and purpose, and kind of the dive down into some of the things we talk about in coaching. I'm going to pull back up just a little ways to the overall coaching process, and then come back in a little bit. You heard Stephanie talking earlier about building a way forward through a proven process, and that process is, of course, coaching. And I know many of us on this call are coaches and know a lot of this information, so it will be review. And I also think it's really helpful for myself to just pull back and look at the process again and see where we're going. So coaching is a basic process of a healthy person who needs a space in which to think with another person who can help keep the big picture in view. And all of us as coaches have been clients. And hopefully we are still clients as we're developing as coaches, because we always face new challenges. We have choices to make. We feel blocked or stuck. We need to step out. We feel isolated, or we're in a transition of some sort. We've all been there. Many of us are here now, and we've all benefited from the process of coaching and from the relationships that we have with our coaches. Like I said, a coaching session is a place. I think of it really as a place or a space to think out loud. In the middle of March, life really changed for all of us suddenly. And we have been responding in various ways. We've been adjusting. We've been learning. I personally have really loved seeing the stories from around the world of neighbors in Italy singing for their neighborhood, or people in Los Angeles organizing food drives for their neighbors. It's been entertaining as well to see what we fall back on. In my house, it's been West Wing and A Chef's Life on PBS. But among all of the good and fun things that are happening, many of us had flashbacks, even bodily responses to other times in our lives when we had to respond to something that changed suddenly. Sometimes it's normal things like graduation or becoming a parent, and we respond in a way that we didn't expect. Sometimes it's completely unexpected things like natural disasters or family crises. What do we do when life suddenly changes? And what questions do we begin to ask ourselves? I actually would love to have people pop in the chat box down at the bottom, places in their own lives where they've had to face something sudden. It can be general or specific. Death in the family, a sudden job change, whatever. And I would love to hear the questions that you started asking yourselves, so that we can see what kind of community we're in and what we all bring to it. So something unexpected that you faced in your life, and also some of the questions you asked yourself during that time. And Stephanie will be reading through those and picking things out. I have spent most of my adult life working cross-culturally and internationally, and our family moved constantly, which by constantly, I mean every couple of years a new house and every few years a new country. So my husband and I and 4 kids eventually had experiences in China, Hong Kong, Kosovo, Macedonia, France, and Germany. So it was a full and very wonderful life, and it also had hard things in it, especially when it came to transition or things changing. I thought I knew how to do transition. I also thought we were really good at making decisions and being aware of consequences until we weren't. In short story form, our family ended up back in the United States in 2012 with 2 daughters in college, 2 sons in middle and high school. And then I became a widow, and we began several years of figuring out what happened and who we really were, which we're still doing. It's over the most painful part, I think. But in the last few years of this, coaching has been that significant place to ask questions, and a place to find out which questions are the most important to ask and to answer. So this year, we as individuals and societies are deciding which questions we need to ask and which ones we want to answer, what we want to take with us into the next part, and what we really would like to leave behind. This is what we do in coaching. The Guardian newspaper in Britain on May 1st had an article about cities around the world whose leaders are taking advantage of this time to plan for what happens next in their cities. And many of them are planning greener ways of moving forward. I'm sure they're doing this all together as a community with other people. And we can also find stories of individuals and groups taking advantage of this time for themselves and really showing what is valuable to them, whether it's as much money as possible or power and control. And many of us are just living through it, hoping things will become more familiar. And it seems to me as I look around that we are revealing our values and becoming more ourselves, whatever that is, and whether we're doing it thoughtfully or not so thoughtfully. One of the questions we do want to answer as we recover from a surprising turn of events is, are we just moving on, or are we moving forward? Are we taking advantage of the time and opportunity to decide what we want to take with us and what we want to leave behind? So with the few minutes left, I'm going to run through some of the basics of what we do together in a coaching session, especially after something happens that we did not plan for. As I came out of my own deepest grieving time, I had plenty of wonderful people supporting me. Really, it was an amazing community that I was given. And there were also people who wanted me to tell me what to do and how to do it. So this is one of my favorite coaching quotes. Coaching is not telling people what to do. It's giving them a chance to, underneath the pictures there, it says, explore what they are doing in light of their intentions. It's being purposeful. That's what we do in a nutshell. As we examine what we're paying attention to, there are 3 things which formally a lot of you will recognize as fulfillment, balance, and process in the words of Coactive Training Institute. But if we translated those into questions, they would be, what would make my life meaningful and satisfying? To Laura's questions about purpose. How do I get there in a way that is life-giving, which goes back to Todd's work? And what is happening as I go in myself and around me? So those are the cornerstones of the coaching. As we move into that conversation, the coach keeps a number of things in front of the client. So what do I care about? How am I approaching this? And what do I already know? Again, as Laura said, what I care about makes a difference to where we're going. My commitments, my energy, where it comes from, where it gets taken away, how I gain it, how I lose it. My values, my desires and dreams. How am I approaching this? Todd talked about beliefs. We have mindsets, and we have attitudes. The hardest part for me in coaching has been assumptions, because if I have assumptions, I don't know what they are. I just act out of them. So this has been the place of hard work. And each client in coaching will have their own place of hard work. That was mine. Perspectives and company. Who are we traveling with? Who are we going with? Who do we want to be with? How do we stay aware? And what do I already know? What skills do I have? What habits and patterns do I have that I can use in my work? What work do I need to do in myself? and what do others have to say? What can I read? Who can I listen to? What can I learn as I keep moving? So in 2020, or from 2012, or whenever it was that you started asking questions, what are we taking with us? How do we want things to be different than they were? How do we want them to be the same? And who can make that happen? Again, I'd love to hear some of your chat answers on that. What questions are we asking, and how will we work on answering them? Because we are valuable. What we do matters, and how we do it matters. So I'd love to open it up to anything that's in the chat box or any other questions.
Do you want me to read the questions that came in?
Sure.
Like the types of questions. So relationships, when is it the right time? How to interact with compromise? Will family be accepting? Job change, how do I do this? What if I fail? Generally, why is this happening and why now? A couple of divorce ones. Was it my fault? Will I be okay financially? Will my kids be ruined? Am I a bad person? Am I making the right decision? Another one, am I making the right decision generally? And what are the steps that need to be taken? What needs to be done?
Thank you for sharing all those, everybody. Those are really valuable questions, and I hope it's been a good process for you in how you've worked on answering them.
Okay, a couple of general questions. Whoops. Sorry, I have two screens. It keeps popping over. What do I do if I don't know what questions to ask?
I really enjoy working with people in that situation because they learn about themselves so much as we work through it. The quick answer is the coach should be able to help you do that. And I often do that. I will come into a coaching session with a general feeling about something or desire, and I haven't quite put it into words yet. That's why I like to think of a coaching session as a place to think out loud as you get to the questions eventually.
So actually with that, what should I expect from a coaching session and from my coach?
I would expect that a coach has training. I've seen a lot of coaches out there who have just hung up their shingle, and a coach would need to be client-centered. It's about you as the client. It's not about the coach needing to teach or counsel or mentor or consult. It's all about you and what you need to do in the session. So that would be one key thing to start with. And it really also would be helpful to sit down and think for yourself, what's important to me in a person that I'm talking with? What do I need from a coach?
And another one, what have you found to be some of the hardest parts of coaching sessions from the client's perspective?
From the client's perspective, it is when a client is faced with a question they haven't asked themselves before, that can be really hard. And the client in that moment has to make a choice about how hard they're going to work at it, how honest they will be with themselves and with the coach, and what they really desire in that moment. So that's a hard point, because you really get down to what you want. Stephanie, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen if we're ready for that.
And then just want to open it up. If anybody has any other questions for all three of our wonderful panelists today, Laura, Patricia, or Todd, please feel free to unmute yourself or send a note in chat. And while that's going on, I just want you all to know that tomorrow at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, we have coaches Jenny Heike, Jan Bush, and Kirsten Holmberg. They'll be here tomorrow discussing how to navigate these times to keep your business going through resilience and communication, as well as ways that you can have the greatest positive impact during these times. So please, if you can, join us tomorrow. And then we do have another one on Thursday for our overall well-being. We have 2 panelists that will be discussing that. Any last?
One of the things that I would just add to, like the question on the money, is it immoral? Is it an immoral purpose? That would be an excellent, just a one-liner to go through the questioning and find out what is true for you, and see where that comes from. So like when you're building your purpose, is like Laura laid out, if those, like, this feels wrong, then question that belief as you move to build your purpose, and then your way forward. Because if there is a stressful thought around money, which a lot of times there are with people, I know that's the case with me in the past, and so questioning that belief to help build that purpose in your way forward is really really essential.
Thank you, Todd, for adding that. And I also, just in case somebody didn't see in the chat, somebody put a book out there that I want to make sure everybody's aware of, and it was The Purpose-Driven Life. So in case, just want to make sure it was in the chat. Somebody suggested that.
And I did have a question. These sessions are recorded, and I will be putting them on YouTube. I didn't find out until this morning that your registrations were not recorded, so I do not have access to anybody's email, meaning I can't send you the link. So my apologies for that. I'd love to share the slides and the recordings, but they will be on our YouTube channel, just ICF High Country. I'm waiting for yesterday's career one to be posted by Deb Armstrong, and then right after this call I'm going to download it and then upload it back to YouTube. So I do apologize that I can't send out the notes, but at least the videos will be available on our YouTube channel, ICF High Country. And then Todd, Patricia, and Laura all shared their contact information, so please feel free to give them a ring. They are amazing people, and I've really enjoyed working with them, especially in the last couple of weeks as we put this together. So thank you so much for your time today. It was excellent. I learned a lot. I really appreciate it very much. And if there are no more questions, we do have a few more minutes if anyone wants to ask anything or discuss anything.
I wanted to say a couple comments. First off, thank you. I appreciate you guys for doing this. I think it definitely can be a very overwhelming and stressful time, to say the least. So the fact that we can all be there for each other and support each other, I think, is huge. So just a couple comments. Todd, I really appreciated you talking about the work and the 4 questions. I think sometimes we can get caught in the weeds on things that really aren't that important, or we need to kind of look at these things like, is this even something we need to be focusing our energy on and being stressed out about? So I thought that was a great point for you to bring that up. Laura, I think just obviously finding your true north, obviously we've all been through our own things in our lives, and we're all on this journey, and you know, just to keep that in perspective, I think is huge, and I appreciate you and your words. I thought you did a really good job. Patricia, I think what really stood out to me was your question on, are we just moving forward, moving on, or moving forward? I think that's a really good point, and to think that at the top of our mind as well. So thank you guys so much. I learned a lot today as well, and I appreciate all of you, and I'm glad I was able to make it on this call, so thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Sure.
All right, well, it looks like I can give you all back 5 minutes of your day. So thank you so much for calling in today. And we hope to see you the rest of the week, especially tomorrow when we talk about business in this COVID-19 atmosphere and environment. So we'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for joining.